Good afternoon, and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink. And here are the top stories. President Faye reaffirms his agenda for a prosperous Senegal as the country marks its 61st independence anniversary.
Les Sénégalais sont braves, mais ils sont fatigués.
The Senegalese are brave, but they are tired and are waiting for us to find solutions. The question of the cost of living particularly concerns me. In the days to come, strong measures will be taken in this direction.
The Togolese government again postpones legislative and regional elections earlier slated for April 20, 2024. In Liberia, thousands of students petitioned the Minister of Education over poor learning conditions, among others.
7 volunteers that have the degrees C certificate B and BSc. They are all volunteers working with the school. Those that even have the BSc, they are unpaid.
And Ghana joins Cote d'Ivoire to increase cocoa prices by 50% to support producers and fight smuggling. Please stay tuned for details of the stories and more.
Here is Imo Edit with Newslink.
Happy Independence Day to Senegal, and many thanks for joining us, and we welcome our listeners in the Gambia, Ghana and Liberia. Senegal is celebrating the 61st independence anniversary of its independence today, Thursday, April 4. The new head of state, President Bassirou Diomaye Faye, made his first address to the nation Wednesday evening, reaffirming his agenda for the country. President Faye was eagerly awaited by the Senegalese people who brought him to power and did not fail to reiterate his priorities. Ogaberika report.
President Bassirou Diomaye Faye has remained true to his campaign promises, which will be the priorities during his first 5-year mandate, starting with the high costs of living.
Les Sénégalais sont braves, mais ils sont fatigués.
The Senegalese are brave, but they are tired and are waiting for us to find solutions. The question of the cost of living particularly concerns me and is of great concern to me. In the days to come, strong measures will be taken in this direction after the consultations that I will undertake with the concerned actors.
Avec les acteurs concernés.
Brought to power mainly by Senegal's youth, the new president promises to give them back the power.
Chers jeunes du Sénégal,
Dear young people of Senegal, I will make education, training, employment, entrepreneurship for young people and women a high priority of public policies in consultation with the private sector. To encourage the creation of jobs, I count on a strong private sector partnership because it is supported by the state.
parce que soutenu par l'État.
Diomaye Faye also says he is not forgetting the fishing, livestock and agriculture sectors. Particular attention will also be paid to the exploitation of natural resources, notably oil and gas. The new president has also announced a number of political reforms, including a reform of the electoral system and a rationalization of the number of political parties. These reforms will be carried out in consultation with the political class and civil society. Bassirou Diomaye Faye also intends to reform the judicial system and has announced a series of meetings with the players involved. Finally, he promises a relentless fight against corruption and is making good governance his hobby horse.
Guberica reporting there. April 4, called Independence Day or National Day, dates back to the same day in 1960 when Senegal signed the Transfer of Power Agreement with its former colonial power, France. However, Senegalese political analyst Professor Guégu Dieng said the April 4 declaration does not represent Senegal's independence or sovereignty. According to Professor Dieng, the responsibility lies on the shoulders of the new government to ensure Senegal enjoys economic, political and security sovereignties that are depriving its citizens of their freedom needed.
This is a turning point because it coincides with the victory of a younger generation over what we call the old school politicians. I believe that this is really what a celebration represents in the eyes of many, especially the youth. From a post-colonial perspective, if you analyze the situation in which many African countries are, especially French-speaking African countries, we really have got to admit that there is a big difference between what we have in the former British colonies and the other former colonial territories liberated by Britain. We notice a big difference. Those countries formerly dominated by Britain enjoy more freedom in every respect than the French-speaking countries. This is a reality. Even the Gambia, which is smaller than Senegal, I think enjoys more freedom, economic freedom, political freedom than Senegal. And I believe that this is the sovereignty which hasn't been there for decades that the new generation of leaders want to bring back to Senegal.
Professor Gege Jiang is an academia and a public affairs analyst. Well, we'll be bringing you more discussion about that on our guest interview segment. The crossover now to Gambia, where citizens there have expressed optimism about the Gambia-Senegal relations under the newly inaugurated President Bashir Diomaye Faye. Diomaye Faye, 44, took the oath of office at the ceremony in Jamiajo on Tuesday. From Manjo, Sankle Janko has more.
There is buzz surrounding the recent election of Senegal's new president, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, and what it means for Gambia-Senegal relations. This was led by President Barrow, who says he expects the maintenance of peace and further strengthening ties between Gambia and Senegal under the new Senegalese president. Speaking at the Banjul International Airport upon returning from Faye's inauguration, Barrow said, and I quote, "We are one family and one people, so I expect us to build on that and nothing less." Meanwhile, WADR took to the streets of Banjul to hear from Gambians about their expectations regarding the newly elected Senegalese president and the future of diplomatic relations between the two neighboring countries.
Mr. Faye have to work on to make sure that the Senegal relationship remains stronger, and to also consider Senegalese in the Gambia and as well as Gambians in Senegal to see that the relationship remains smooth.
As a young Gambian, I am expecting a relationship that will be of mutual benefits between the two countries under President Diomaye Faye. A win for Gambia is a win for Senegal.
For Yahya Jawo, the relationship between the Gambia and Senegal is a long, unique relationship and should continue to be cherished.
The use of the term Senegambia itself has a long history and appears to be in connection with the royal province of Senegambia, which was created by the British in 1765, according to history. So our relationship with Senegal, particularly cultural relations, cannot be overemphasized.
It's evident that Gambians are optimistic about the potential for strengthening ties with Senegal under President Faye's leadership. With shared interest in trade, security, and regional stability, both nations have much to gain from fostering closer cooperation. The Gambia enjoyed an excellent relationship with Senegal under former president, who was described by President Barrow as a close friend who loves the Gambia. For Newslink on West Africa Democrats Radio, I'm Sankule Janko reporting from Banjul.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Well, let's bring you more stories now as we head to Togo, where the presidency has again postponed the legislative and regional elections slated for April 20, 2024. Without a new date, the government, in a statement, clarified that the postponement will allow the state to carry out the necessary consultations on the contested constitutional reform project adopted on March 25. Today, April 4, would have marked the commencement of the electoral campaigns until the government's announcement on Wednesday evening. Francis Boniface completes the story.
The decision was taken following a meeting between Togolese President Faure Gnassingbé and the National Assembly. A press release from the Togolese presidency states that the timetable for the legislative and regional elections has been adjusted slightly. It should be noted that no new date has been announced. The presidency cites the need for strong consultations on the contested draft constitutional reform as justification for the postponement. This reform, adopted on March 25 this year, has been the cause of fierce protest in the country. Political actors and members of the civil society are all opposed to the text, which would move the country from a presidential to a parliamentary system. A second reading on the said amendment is expected shortly following an executive order by President Faure Gnassingbé last weekend. This is the second time in less than 2 months that the dates for the legislative and regional elections has been changed. Initially scheduled for 13 April, then later pushed back to 20 April following consultations between the political players. The term of office for deputies expired on 31 December 2023.
Francis Boniface reporting there. In Sierra Leone, the fight against the sale, distribution and consumption of the synthetic drug Kush is reaching a new height as the government announces a drastic measure. Effectively, immediately, Vice President Mohamed Jude Jallo says no Kush cartel owner or member arrested will be granted bail. This directive, issued on Tuesday at a town hall meeting in Freetown, is part of effort to curtail the prevailing existence of drug intake by young people in the country, resulting in several deaths. David Vincent reports that the meeting aimed at strategizing efforts to combat the spread of Kush, an endemic substance in Sierra Leone.
Vice President Mohamed Jude Jallo, who is also chairman of the Police Council, instructed that anyone arrested in connection with the Kush cartel should not be granted bail. Jallo said the directive targets cartels even if they have 150 lawyers, human rights activists, or any number of defenders. The vice president informed the gathering that over the weekend, 2 containers of Kush were intercepted and 7 individuals arrested. Piloting the enforcement, the several suspects now in police custody will be charged to court and sentenced without any lawyer defending them. For his part, the Inspector General of Police, William Fayaselu, emphasized the prevalence of Kush as a harmful drug and commended Sierra Leoneans for initiating discussions on tackling the issue. The police chief elaborated on the legal framework in place for addressing Kush-related crimes, highlighting the potency of the Pharmacy Act of 2001 and National Drug Control Act of 2008, which permits severe penalties, including life imprisonment and asset seizure. Last month, the government conducted a mass burial for 32 people who died from Kush. With 1 to 2 dead bodies picked up per day by emergency workers, health experts are encouraging stringent measures to save lives and curb the drug menace that can now potentially affect other countries in the sub-region.
David Vincent reporting there. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of the top stories. President Faye reaffirms his agenda of a prosperous Senegal as the country marks its 64th independence anniversary. The Togolese government again postpones legislative and regional elections earlier slated for April 20, 2024. In Liberia, thousands of students petitioned the Ministry of Education over poor learning conditions, among others. That's on the other half of the news. And Ghana joins Cote d'Ivoire to increase cocoa prices by 50% to support producers and fight smuggling. We do have a guest interview, press review, and sport news. Please stay with us.
You are listening to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal.
We are streaming live on WADR.org, YouTube, and Facebook. Thousands of students in southeastern Liberia have submitted a petition to the government, calling on the authority to see education as one of the most important aspects of national renaissance and progress. Students in remote areas, especially the southeast and hard-to-reach regions, have been performing low in public examinations due to the number of constraints they are faced with. WDR's Ellington Poppy Monrovia completes the story.
In their petition to the Minister of Education, Dr. Jason Malejala, the students underscored the need to renovate all existing learning institutions, build new ones, and employ competent teachers. The necessities that guarantee a standard living conditions such as water, sanitation, and hygiene facilities were cited.
This campus is like vulnerable that any student can just work at any hour of the school hours. They want to go anywhere, they can just school because no fence.
Because we have lacking of many paid teachers, for the lesson to be disseminated to the students, somehow it's difficult.
School administrative officials also voiced their concerns. According to them, the government has failed to regularize teachers who have been working for several years. They describe the government's refusal as a serious constraint, demoralizing learning process in the region.
In my school, I having 7 volunteers that have the degrees C certificate B and BSc. They are all volunteers working with the school. Those that even have the BSc, they are unpaid.
Having listened to the petitioners, Education Minister Jason Malejala expressed confidence that the state will resolve some of the constraints once the legislature passes the draft budget into law.
If we must succeed, there's more to be done. We need to govern ourselves with integrity. The issue of integrity is lacking at every facet of our operations, and that has been some of the key reasons crippling our system.
The Liberian minister insists on all hands This on-desk approach is needed if the education sector will improve. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Darlington Pogba in Monrovia.
Let's head now to Nigeria, where President Bola Tinubu on Wednesday signed the National Student Loan Amendment Bill into law. The new legislation repeals the previous Student Loans Act of 2023 and reenacts the Student Loans Bill from 2004. President Tinubu signed the bill in a short ceremony at the State House in the presence of senior cabinet ministers and the president of the National Association of Nigerian Students. Tinubu initially signed the student loan bill into law back in June 2023 to offer financial assistance to Nigerian students in tertiary institutions, but faced delay in its implementation due to various issues.
Education is the tool to fight against poverty effectively. We are determined to ensure education is given the proper attention necessary for the country, including skill development programs. This is to ensure that no one, no matter how poor their background is excluded from quality education and opportunity to build their future. We are here because we are all educated and we are helped. In the past, you've seen a lot of our children drop out of colleges and given up the opportunity. That is no more. The standard and the control is there for you to apply, no matter who you are, as long as you are a Nigerian citizen.
That was Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu speaking there. Ghana is expected to raise a fixed farm gate price offered to cocoa farmers, aiming to distribute profits from escalating global prices and discourage bean smuggling. Over the past year, cocoa prices have surged, tripling due to disease outbreaks and adverse weather conditions in both Ghana and neighboring Côte d'Ivoire, leading to a consecutive deficit in the global market. This was stated on Wednesday by COCOBOT, the National Cocoa Marketing Office. Fifi Boafo, head of public affairs at COCOBOT, said the new price could be announced as early as this week, but declined to comment further. COCOBOT said it lost around 150,000 tons of cocoa beans to smuggling and illegal gold mining, known locally as galamsey, during the 2022-23 season. She now expects even greater losses this season as rising global cocoa prices create greater incentives.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Well, let's head back to Accra as we join Nadia Tete for the newspaper review.
Greetings from Accra, and you're welcome to the newspaper review segment. Start off with the Daily Graphic newspaper. As usual, a major newspaper. The front page here says Ghana's democracy inspires Africa. That's according to the Kenyan President William Ruto. He is in the country for a state visit. Other stories here focus more on referencing local businesses, as according to the graphic MD to the UPSA faculty. Also on the front page, Nungwa residents divided over alleged child marriage. That'll be it for the Daily Graphic newspaper. Let's now go to the Ghanaian Times newspaper, another state newspaper. It says here that use AFCFTA to boost trade, African businesses told. Also here, Majority Caucus defends passport fee hike, and Ghana, Kenya renew bond of cooperation, sign 8 MOUs as part of President Ruto's 3-day visit to Ghana. That'll be it for the Ghanaian Times newspaper. To the Daily Guide newspaper now. Front page, NPP leads in positive social media comments. Also, Ghana-Kenya deepen ties, and independent candidate pops up in Obuasi West. Also on the front page of the Daily Guide newspaper, minister takes on Alan over religious claims. To the Daily Post newspaper now, we will compensate Isao Yaro and put his life back on track. That's according to former President John Dramani Mahama, who is also the flag bearer of the NDC, and he's talking in relation to the Ayawaso West Wagon violence. And this individual in question was a victim of that violence. Other stories here on the front page of the Daily Post newspaper. Honorable Clement Apak launches youth and apprenticeship program in Bills South. To the New Crusading Guide newspaper, Ghana, Kenya strengthen relations to boost trade. Stephen Amwa replaces John Kuma as Deputy Finance Minister, and Senior Staff Association restores calm at GNPC, exonerates CEO, and Roads Minister tours Bono region. And the final one here, Bawumia running mate saga, strike balance between regional and religious affinity. The next paper we have here is a Chronicle newspaper. Front page, Osei Mensa Bonso warns NPP. Breaking the 8 won't be a child's play. Minority in Parliament demand increase in farm gate price of cocoa, and housing sector is being revolutionized. That's according to the Minister for Works and Housing, Kojo Opon Nkrumah. To the final newspaper I have here, the Finder newspaper. Ghana and Kenya commit to enhance trade and investment. Dr. Bawumia cuts sword for 200-bed hostel for Trinity Theological Seminary, and Access Bank posts 1 billion Ghana cedis profit before tax. So that'll be it for today's edition of the newspaper review segment. I am Nadidi Tete. It's back to you now.
Many thanks, Nadide, for the newspaper review.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Now back to the discussion about April 4, which marks the Independence Day anniversary for millions of Senegalese at home and abroad. This national holiday commemorates Senegal's struggle for freedom. According to history, Senegal became a republic on November 15, 1958 and achieved its independence on August 20, 1960 under the leadership of President Leopold Sedar Senghor in office from 1960 to 1980. Senegal declared itself an independent country on June 20, 1960. So why is Independence Day celebrated on April 4? We caught up with Professor Gugi Jeng, an academia and a public affairs analyst, and he spoke on the country's history, the independence celebration which coincides with the installation of a new government and the topic of its sovereignty.
Senegal became a colony before having been invaded in some of its parts by other European colonizers, Portugal, Holland, etc. But it was at the end of the 19th century, after the collapse of the remaining kingdoms, especially the kingdom of Kajor, with its outstanding king, Lat Jor Ngoné Latyr, who was killed in 1886 at the Battle of Dakar, that Senegal really became a colony. And then in 1960, Senegal became an independent country, like most African countries, especially countries dominated by France. But we have got to make something clear to many people, because we believe that Senegal achieved independence on April the 4th. We're celebrating April the 4th, but we have got to understand that Senegal as a state with the name Senegal did not achieve independence on April the 4th. April the 4th has simply been taken by the first president of Senegal, because this date represents, in actual fact, the date when the Federation of Mali proclaimed its independence. The Federation of Mali, composed of the colony of French Sudan and Senegal, they proclaimed their independence on April the 4th, 1959. And I've got to make it clear also that it wasn't only the two countries, the two colonies, who had wanted to become independent as one entity. We have got to mention Dahomey, Upper Volta. So 4 colonies intended to achieve independence as one entity. But on April the 4th, 1959, 2 countries walked away from the project. That is Dahomey, present-day Benin, and then Upper Volta, present-day Burkina Faso. So on April the 4th, Senegal and the French Sudan, present-day Mali, proclaimed their independence from France. But it was only on June the 20th that France accepted to grant independence to the Federation of Mali. And then, unfortunately, 2 months later, on August the 20th, 1960, the Federation collapsed. And then Senegal proclaimed its independence later. that is on August the 20th, and Mali on September the 22nd. So you see then that the day we're celebrating Independence Day doesn't represent Independence Day of Senegal as a political entity, but the proclamation of the independence of the Federation of Mali. But as a symbol, this symbolizes a lot. This is the reason why the first president chose April the 4th as Senegal's Independence Day.
Why you think the president at the time chose April the 4th?
Yes, because this is the proclamation of independence. In most countries, in most entities, it is when the people had decided to proclaim their independence, it is those days that are taken. And this is something important because it is the proclamation of the independence of the Federation of Mali, or the Federation of Mali represent a lot in West Africa. The Mali Empire was one of the biggest empires in West Africa. And the Federation was named after that great West African empire. So I believe that the reference to Mali had something to do with President Senghor's decision to choose April the 4th rather than the actual Independence Day of Senegal, that is August the 20th.
What can you say in terms of its representation on the nation?
It represents a lot, because even though many people do not know anything about the real history of the independence of the country, April the 4th represents for them the actual day on which Senegal became independent.
Professor Gugu Jeng is an academia and a public affairs analyst. And here is Sport News with Sankle Janko.
Hello out there, warm welcome and thank you for joining us. Coach of the Super Falcons of Nigeria, Randy Waldrum, has reportedly warned his team to be wary of the threat Banyana of South Africa pose as they lock horns in the final round of the Paris 2024 Olympics qualifiers. SoccerNet reports the 67-year-old tactician made the comments ahead of Nigeria's encounter with South Africa on Friday. The 11-time WAFCON winners will take on Desiree Elise's South Africa in a two-legged tie, hoping for a victory in the bid to seal a spot at the Paris 2024 Olympics, according to media reports. South Africa is the last hurdle for Nigeria in their quest to return to the Olympics for the first time since 2008. Elsewhere, Super Eagles forward Victor Boniface has returned from injury to the delight of his Bayer Leverkusen coach Xavi Alonso. The Nigerian international was sidelined for 3 months before playing for Leverkusen in their 4-0 thrashing of Fortuna Düsseldorf in the German Super Cup semi-final on Wednesday. He was quoted as saying it was special for him to return after 3 months out. He worked hard to get on the pitch, Alonso said. Boniface registered 16 goals and 7 assists in 24 appearances for Bayer Leverkusen in the first half of the season, and he'll be a valuable addition to their quest for their first German Bundesliga title. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
And we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Christian Mukadi and Maudoju for the technical assistance. Well, they keep the conversation coming on our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, WDR News, and Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is our flagship environment program, Enviroscope with Abdullah Hassan. I am Imo Edet. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for